By now, acts influenced by Hendrix and The Who understood the symbolic power of a guitar flung over the head and were beginning to incorporate it into their show. Many of these new acts made the guitar smash something more regular and something more opulent. Kiss were a band built entirely around the spectacle of rock and roll, and their guitarist Paul Stanley understood how a guitar smash played into that. He explained in an interview with AllMusic. The idea of almost ritualistically smashing a guitar is something so cool and touches a nerve in so many people that it seemed like a great way to put a period, or to dot the I or cross the T at the end of the show. That this is over. It's the climax. Stanley has smashed a guitar to end almost every Kiss show to this day. Of course, this kind of smashing can have its costs, because the reality is that guitars can be expensive instruments. They were so expensive, in fact, that The Who's guitar smashing antics nearly drove them to bankruptcy by the late 60s. But some guitarists found clever ways to get around this. In the 80s, Guns N' Roses guitarist Slash bought cheap factory second guitars explicitly intended for destruction. One of these guitars has been broken and re-repaired countless times over, and still remains one of Slash's favorites to this day. But not all destruction is so planned. One of the most iconic moments in guitar destruction came on September 20th, 1979, when bouncers at a Clash show were keeping the crowd quiet. Bassist Paul Simonon was more accustomed to raucous UK punk crowds and became frustrated at the demure crowd. He decided to take this anger out on his Fender P-Bass, and was caught in the act by photographer Penny Smith. The resulting photograph would become one of the most iconic in the history of rock music, and the cover for London Calling. That perfectly timed smash photo captures all the rage of the punk rock movement in a single frame, forever putting Simonon next to Hendrix and Townsend in the Guitar Destruction Hall of Fame. Unsurprisingly, the Clash weren't the only punk rockers to trash their guitars. Wendy Williams, leader of the punk rock band Plasmatics, took guitar destruction to a whole other level in the late 70s and early 80s by taking chainsaws to her guitars. The legacy of Williams' destruction carried on into the 90s when grunge began to take over the world. The popular leader of that movement, Kurt Cobain, channeled all the destruction of his metal and punk influences and became famous for his on-stage violence. Cobain would buy cheap guitars from pawn shops specifically to destroy, allowing him to indulge himself in wild acts of instrumental violence. The most famous of these episodes came in 1992, at the end of Nirvana's performance at the Reading Festival. There, Nirvana systematically dismantled every piece of their stage, tilting over amps, throwing stage equipment at each other, and bathing in feedback until nothing was left intact. It was a loud and violent punctuation to an iconic show, and a statement that Nirvana could destroy as good as any of the great rock gods before them. 20th century, the role of rock diminished, and the guitar smash followed in its wake, though it didn't disappear completely. Many rock and metal acts will still indulge themselves in flights of destruction, whether out of spectacle or pure anger. Muse's Matt Bellamy has picked up the guitar destruction torch and destroyed a number of guitars throughout his career, and in 2021, Phoebe Bridgers destroyed her guitar on stage following her SNL set, a stunt done with a fake speaker and the blessing of guitar manufacturer Danelectro. Nevertheless, the act drew ire from fans on social media, notably from iconic rocker David Crosby. The reaction to Bridgers' destruction is a reminder of how far we've come from the days of Townsend's early fits of rage being the talk of the town. But it also shows that even though people have been doing it for 60 years, there is still rebellion to be found in the art of the guitar smash. And yes, it might be wasteful, and yes, it might be indulgent, but come on, just look at it and try to tell me that this, or this, or this, or even this, are not the epitome of rock and roll.